Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Mom Founders Table. And today is a very special day because today is not only our first interview on the Mom Founders Table, it is with one of my favorite people in the universe,
Oh,
Sharise
thank
Johnson.
you.
Sharise Johnson is a former client of mine turned definitely friend who is such an incredible inspiration and doing some of the coolest, best work in this world between all the businesses that she has. So I'm excited for you guys to hear from her today, to learn more about her, to learn more about her business, her incredible insights that she has around business, and to also talk about what it was like working with me and hear from her point of view. So sit back, relax, listen in. Charisse, welcome. Thank you for spending your time with me this morning.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here. So excited.
So tell our listeners about you, your family, and your business.
Yes. Okay. Well, I am a mom entrepreneur, as I like to call it. And I actually decided to launch and found my business a little over 6 years ago. I came up in what I call the education communication space. And I call it that because I come from a long line of teachers, educators, school district leaders throughout my family. And I was the sole one that was like, being a teacher and being in the classroom is not my jam. And so I just knew I was going to go into news. I was going to be a news anchor or a meteorologist. Went to school for that. And then when I graduated, I took my first job in Oklahoma as a news producer. And I quickly realized this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. So I moved back to my hometown of Atlanta and got a job in corporate communications at AT&T. And then I got a call randomly one day to take a role at Atlanta Public Schools in Atlanta, Georgia. And that's what really spearheaded my career in education comms. I got a fast track full dive in of all things crisis comms, communications in the K through 12 space. And then that led to other future opportunities in the nonprofit education space, working in the charter school space, more public school districts. And one of the things I kept noticing was as I was in these roles, former managers and colleagues and friends would contact me wanting to know if I was doing any side work in terms of communications. And I noticed that it was for two main reasons, right? One was because there was a gap in the quality of folks that sat at the intersection of understanding strategic, high quality communications and understanding the K through 12 ed space and all of its various nuances. And the second reason is because there was just a lack of representation from diversity and people of color at the table, making core decisions and trying to communicate with families and staff members and employees that oftentimes looked a lot like myself. And so I noticed that there was clearly a need, right, in the industry for this type of support. And after doing this as a side hustle for a couple of years, and once I started to see that I was making more in this side hustle than I was in my full-time job, I was like, oh, it's time to make a change. And so that's how SMJ Communications was founded. My goal was to create a firm that not only created high quality work and deliverables, but that really got in, was able to roll up our sleeves and really assist clients with very intricate quality work, to serve as a high quality consultant and to also make sure that we are being intentional about helping to diversify this space in different ways, from the contractors that I work with, the staff that I hire. I want to make sure that we are representing various lived experiences, various walks of life, so that ultimately we can bring those things to the table as communicators on behalf of our clients and partners. So that's how SMJ was born. And like I said, we've been in existence for almost 6 years now, and we have now become a multi-million-dollar company, which is still wild to say to this day. And what started as just a little side hustle has now become just something beyond my wildest imagination and dreams at this point. And so I'm super excited about the impact I get to make every day and the great people that I have the opportunity to work with each day through this work.
One of the things that I love the most about you is how you have created this path, not only for women of color, but for women everywhere, to show them what is possible when you recognize a need and you lead with your heart, and how you can create something that, like, your business is highly profitable and has afforded you incredible opportunities and an incredible lifestyle for you and your 3 little girls.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's this, like, I think a lot of times women get stuck in, like, it has to be one or the other. Like, I can either make a lot of money, or I can do something I love, or it just doesn't. And so I love that you are such a beautiful example of, you can be a, like, wildly wealthy woman, and you can also lead with your heart, and you can also create great change. And I remember one of our first conversations, just like the passion pouring out of your mouth of, like, it is so important to have women of color at these tables because there aren't enough. And I think that because you lead with that, would you say that because you're so heart driven, that actually contributes to, like, when things get hard?
100%, because I do feel like I lead with my heart, and this work is so personal to me, right? Like, as a wife, as a mom of 3 little girls, as a mom whose kids are starting to actively go through, right, the school system and our local school district, like, those things are just so important to me. And so it's this interesting balance of being steeped in work that not only has afforded my family a ton of great opportunity and has really helped us to start to build generational wealth, which has always been the goal for my husband and I, but it also has opened my eyes, right, to a lot of the, like, gaps and challenges in our K through 12 space across the country as well. And so, yes, that makes the work at times difficult to balance because I want to be all in, and I know it's so important. And so it takes a lot of coaching, right, and support to remind myself that, like, you're doing a great job, and you're not going to be able to be superwoman and do it all. And to remind myself of the impact that we're still able to have, right, day in and day out with our clients as well.
Yeah. What do you love about the work that you do the most?
I think what I love about the work that I do the most is knowing that we are, even if it doesn't feel like it every day, we are ultimately helping to shift the trajectory for a particular issue or pain point, or help close the gap to make sure that families and students and staff have clear communication, understand things that are happening, are receiving timely updates and information, and are able to take the action or make the key decisions that they need to make in service to their student success. And so at the heart of it, that is what I'm most proud of, that we're not just churning and burning out work. Like, the work that we're doing is actually helping to move the needle forward in service ultimately to communities, families, and students more than anything. And for me, that is my North Star, right? Like, that is why this work is just so incredibly important, and why I feel like I want to pour so much of myself into it each and every day as well.
Yeah. I understand that. So tell the audience who specifically you primarily work with, and at what point should they reach out to you? When do they know that they need your services?
Yeah. So short answer is, we work with nonprofits that are either community centered or education centered. And then we work with schools, whether that's private, charter, public, and also public school districts as well. So anybody whose mission is aligned with community impact and or education is really the heart and the drumbeat of our work more than anything. And how folks know that it's time to reach out, either when they don't have enough internal capacity to hit their communications goals, or they feel like they don't have any strategy. They just feel like they are throwing communications at the wall and hoping that it sticks without any foundational strategy, metrics, analytics, right? Communications goals. And I would say the third part is if they feel like they have the internal capacity, maybe they started to develop the strategy, but they need that internal capacity building. Like they want to make sure that their comms team and marketing teams have that core professional development and can continue to learn and grow in this space. Then that's also a great time to call on us so that we can come in and help coach and develop your team even further and build that internal capacity.
Yeah. And it's been incredible just to see like and learn more about your work and your industry and the way that it does truly impact people. So here's a fun question for you. What would you tell a woman who is on a similar path, right? So you have 3 very little girls. You have 3 little girls. You have a husband that you are deep in your partnership with. You prioritize your faith. You prioritize your marriage. You prioritize your children. Those are things that like that is part of your character and part of your values. How could somebody take that who is similar to you and still succeed? What is 1 or 2 things that you would tell them that they need to know or take away?
So it's very simple for me. It's ironic because each of my children are named, I think, based on where my husband and I were in this journey of life. And so my girls' names are Faith, Grace, and Joy. And the biggest advice I can give to people are rooted in those names, right? Quite frankly, to have faith, trust yourself, trust the process, and don't be afraid to jump out there and make it happen. It's going to feel scary. You're not going to have all the answers. You're not going to know what's on the other side of it. But I can guarantee you that if you have faith and trust in you, trust in, what you believe in, it is going to work out far better than you can ever imagine. The second thing would be to give yourself grace, right? It's not going to be easy. Entrepreneurship I would never sit here and lie and say it is an easy journey by any means. So give yourself and others lots of grace throughout this process and this journey as well. And the third thing is to not lose sight of your joy, right? In all of it, the ups and downs, the good times, the bad times, like find those moments of joy, of happiness. Remember to pour into yourself and make sure that you are finding opportunities to be joyful every single day. And I think focusing on the faith, grace, and joy aspect of this would be my biggest advice to anybody, no matter where they are in their entrepreneurship journey or what they're trying to consider to jump out and do and take a chance on as well.
Oh, so good. And you guys, we're going to put all of Charisse's like contact information in the show notes, but you should definitely follow her on social media because she is definitely that mom that like does the most with the crafts with her girls.
Oh boy.
I live for when the elf arrives at Christmas at her house to see what happens. And her girls are the cutest. And she always is dressing them in the same outfits. And I just can't. I'm obsessed with your family. So kind of shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk about us and our relationship. And I actually want to open this with something that's like a little bit vulnerable that I want to share with you that was really pivotal actually for my growth that you inspired in me. And so I don't know if you remember this moment, but I'm going to try not to cry. I didn't think I was going to cry.
I was going to say, I hope you don't make me cry.
When I came to Charlotte, I think it was the second time. So for those of you listening, anytime I start with a private client, I fly to where they are and we have a full VIP day together. So Charisse and I had done our VIP day already. We had been working together for a few months already at this point, but I went back to Charlotte for another client and I always love to see my people in person. So I'm like, hey, I have some extra time. Do you want to do another in-person session? So long story short, we met, we're sitting in this coffee shop back in this like dark corner at this table, talking about like her potential, talking about building this other business, which shameless plug for her. She's also stepping into mentoring women of color that want to step out of corporate and into entrepreneurship. So if you are in that space, definitely reach out to her. And I don't remember how we got on the topic, but I think that I somehow mentioned about one of my biggest struggles in my own entrepreneurship journey has been the making peace around the shame around my own story. So I'm sure that most of you listeners probably know this by now, but like, quick story, I rebuilt my life after being arrested 3 times. And obviously, being a woman who has been arrested, who struggled with alcohol, who struggled with drugs, that there's a
Mhm.
lot of people that are going to judge you for that. And I think for a long time, I judged myself. And so I mentioned, I think, something about this. And the words that you said to me were something along the lines of, those reasons are the exact reasons why I hired you, because I'm definitely going to cry, because I
Mhm.
knew that you would never judge me. And I was
Yep.
like, that moment for me, Charisse, was so pivotal, because it was, you have no idea how much those words impacted me, to hear that, like, it's so many times in my life when I'm sitting at tables with multimillionaires, there's still that
Mhm.
voice in my head that says I don't deserve to be there. And that reflected back to me was such a shift in my perspective of the type of space that I've created, and such a reminder of like how I lead, and being okay with my story.
Yes.
So I wanted to share that with you, because that moment is something that changed me, and that I'm so endlessly grateful for. And I don't think that I ever shared that with you.
I love that. No, thank you for sharing that. You haven't. And I do remember that moment, which is wild. And it's just interesting how the words that we say, right, and the actions that we take can have such a big impact on folks, and we don't even realize it. But I mean, it's true, right? The heart of why I felt like I was drawn to you as a coach and a mentor and supporter was because I knew that I could be raw and vulnerable and lay it all out on the table, right? And it not be a problem, right? I wouldn't be looked at as
Mm,
different or, oh, you got all these issues, girl, that you need to work through. Like, none of that. I knew that you would meet me where I was and understand, right? Like, I mean, childhood traumas and anxiety, right? And this need to try to be a perfectionist, all of these things I was bringing to the
mm,
table. I knew that you would understand that for what it was and help me work through it versus, you know, belittling me in any way or making me feel less than. And so for me, that was really important if I was going to make such a great investment, right?
mhm,
In really fostering this relationship and having somebody embedded in like the day to day of my business and my life, frankly, in such a personal way. So just know that that still
mm,
is very much true. And I think one of the top reasons why I felt like it was just such a perfect fit.
mm. Thank you. Thank you for that. Speaking of kind of like when you came to me, you mentioned some
Mhm.
of the things that you were experiencing. So when you hired me, when we started working together, what were the things that you were experiencing, and what were you really looking for?
Yeah. So we had gone from 0 to 60 in this business. I went from being a sole independent consultancy to having a team of 11 plus full-time employees and contractors in a matter of months. So the trajectory and fast-paced progress that we were on was just unreal and unfathomable at that point. And as many folks who were around me day in and day out in terms of clients and team members, it was very lonely and isolating. I felt like there was not anyone that I could talk to that could relate in terms of where I was in terms of business, where I was in terms of what I like to call wifehood and motherhood all at the same time. Because when this was happening, at the heart of all of this, I had just had a miscarriage, but then found out I was pregnant again. And like, it was just a lot happening. So I was literally growing a business and growing my family at the same time, dealing with postpartum, all the things, right? And so
Mm,
for me, I needed an outlet. I needed someone that could help be there to support me because I felt like I was pouring so much into my business and my family and our clients that I was literally, my well was completely empty at that point. And And so I knew it was time to get somebody that understood entrepreneurship and understood the intersection of what that looks like as a mom and a wife, that could really help be a sounding board, a thought partner, help, me with ideas and approaches to the work, help navigate challenges. And so that's what I was looking for more than anything at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like everything that like part that you say brings me back to like a different conversation that
I
we've
know.
had. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's I would never hire somebody that's not a mom. In my experience, when I have, it's like, even when I read books that I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, this is like a 50-year-old white man who like isn't present with his family. Like, I have
Right.
to filter
Right.
this entire book that I read now,
Yes.
and I think
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
like, I think we're kind of used to that as women.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important that we have people that like have similar like values, like the amount of like times that we just talked about like our kids and the funny stories that we shared and stuff like that, to where it's like
Yes.
building like resonance and relatability, to where it's like, I get it if you have to like move your appointment because of a snow day, or like just stuff like that happens,
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit about like some of the specifics that you were experiencing before we were working together. So you talked about like what you really like wanted, what you were
Yep.
needing. What did it kind of look like? Because you had a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of like loneliness. What
Yep.
was that how was that manifesting in your life?
Yeah. I mean, frankly, the best way to describe it is I was drowning, right?
Yeah.
And almost like drowning in success, as strange as that sounds, right? Our business had
Yeah.
never brought in as much money as we were bringing in. I had never made as much money personally for my family. Uh,
Mm.
I think at that point probably had just moved to a new house. Like, all these things were happening that on the outside looked very like, whoa, this is incredible. And on the inside, though, I was like having an internal battle every single morning to like be able to wake up and do this work, because my bar was so high for excellence, for all the reasons we talked about at the top of this, of this really being like heart's work for me and important work for me. And then, but also struggling with, if I'm going to give 110% in this business, then what do I have left to give my family? And most importantly, what do I have left to give myself? Um, Coupled with like, just because of how quickly we scaled and grew, there were very real like people management challenges that we were managing and figuring out. And it was in this weird in between moment of figuring out, okay, am I too deep in the business given how many team members we have? Do I need to pull myself out of the day to day to really be able to manage this business more efficiently and effectively? And so there was a lot of things that I was trying to figure out that like had all just happened so fast that I felt like I didn't have time to really make sense of it all. And so
Mm.
I would say the people management pieces, the just feeling drained, and like my battery was dead by the end of the day and I didn't have anything left to give myself or my family. Um, and and also just trying to figure out what is the best structure for how quickly we've scaled as a company as well, were some of the main things that I was dealing with when you and I first connected.
Mm. Do you remember what was one of your first biggest like breakthroughs or aha moments or like wins that you experienced after we started working together?
Ooh, there's a lot. Um, so I'm gonna bring up two, right? One
Okay.
is um the level of self-awareness that I received through our sessions and our one-on-one time together each month really opened my eyes to, I could do so much and put so many processes and systems and all the things in place. But until I actually did some like self-reflection work and realized the things that I was saying yes to, the boundaries that I was not setting, right? The the time that I was spending doing other things versus pouring into my cup first. That was, I think, one of the most pivotal moments of like, oh wait, I can actually control this. right? Like I actually can make core decisions and say, nope, I'm going to stop working at this time. Like, as simple as that sounds, that was a huge breakthrough and aha moment that, quite frankly, to this day, I still reflect on daily, right? Like, it's a daily
Mm.
reminder of like, nope, you have a choice, you can choose, right? You can make clear decisions in your business. Um, and then I think the second is the first time I went to one of your private coaching retreats, and I didn't know what to expect. And it ended up being one of the most phenomenal experiences I've ever had with such a dynamic group of women. And I left just feeling so energized and confident and like I can do whatever I put my mind to, which was excellent. And coming out of that, like one of the goals that my husband and I had were we had started to build our real estate portfolio. And and so we made a decision to like go all in on a rather large investment property. And so it was like, wait a minute, I don't think I would have had the gusto to do that. I would not have had the confidence. I would have been worried about, oh God, what does this mean? How are we going to get the funds for this? All of these things. And I think that was an aha moment because a few days at a retreat literally shifted the trajectory of my life and how I was showing up as a human and a business leader and put things in place that I would have never thought I would have been able to accomplish so quickly. So I would say, like, I know those are two very different examples, but those are two that stand out to me more than anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I still remember the conversation. I think you like sent me the link to the beach house and you were like,
Yeah.
we're buying this. And I'm
Yep.
like, yeah, you are.
Right. You are.
And it's so, I love that you brought up just kind of like the accountability aspect and like the confidence building piece, because I think that like when you're succeeding, a lot of people have this idea that when you're succeeding, you already have this level of like being able to believe in everything that you do. And I
Yeah.
think what people forget is like every like new level that you go to, everything new that you try, everything that you put out into the world, you still have uncertainty and fear around. And I
Yeah.
think that was another really cool thing about you is that there was such like trust in our relationship that you were like, I saw you like start to formulate new ideas and start to be like, we could do this and we could shift this around and we could, introduce these new services. And it was like
Yeah.
watching you come out of this, like that drowning feeling into somebody who was like energized and inspired. And even the way that you shifted, even like taking care of your appearance and working out again and just like
Yes.
all of these things that have just like manifested in every area of your life. And it was the coolest thing for me to watch. And like, some of our last calls together, you just show up and you're so happy and you're like beaming. And we're talking about like all the exciting things. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
it was so refreshing to watch you make that change. And so it's kind of speaking of changes, what were some of maybe the like the changes that you saw like in your business
Yeah.
specifically that maybe were small but you saw a big result from, or maybe just were really impactful for you?
Yeah. I think one of the major ones was just how much you were able to help me streamline like our services and offerings and what I like to call like value proposition messaging. You would think, right, as somebody that leads communications and marketing for clients all day, every day, that that would be my thing. But it's always like the thing that you do 24/7. It's so much harder when you try to do it for your own business or organization. And so what I loved was your ability to be able to push me in that of like, okay, wait, because I couldn't see the forest for the trees, right? Like, wait a second, like you're doing a lot and you're offering a lot. We can streamline this without impacting revenue in a way that makes your job easier, makes your sales and discovery calls that much more efficient, right? And really allows people to clearly see where they fit into this pie of services and offerings, like, this is me. And then we went through all of these exercises over a series of weeks of like, how then do we message that in terms of what gap we're trying to close, what challenge we're trying to fix, and then the results and outcomes ultimately that our clients receive from working with us at SMJ Communications. And so I think that was huge because just with so much happening in the business and so much rapid growth, I could not even start to think through all those things. And quite frankly, there were things that like in my gut I knew I needed to do, or I didn't like doing anymore, or we needed to pivot. But it was just the shift that would happen when I would have conversations with you and you would either, validate that or provide further evidence of why that was right. My gut feeling was accurate. And I just think those things were beautiful because it really allowed me to step out very confidently in the decisions and changes that we were making in the business in real time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting to see how like the small things ripple. And you bring up such a good point about like how everything is connected, how like
Yeah.
streamlining services and offerings can free up time, right? And then when you have more time, then you're able to, take the girls to their activities or pick them up from
Right.
school. And I think like that kind of segues into my next question, which is about like the bigger picture, right? So we know that when we're working together, we're working on like a granular level and we're looking at like services, offerings, team, like looking at all the little pieces because they all intersect. And when we're changing those pieces, it's affecting another piece. And so taking that wider and bigger for people here, how did making the changes inside of your business that we make affect the outside of your business?
Oh, major ways. I was one coming into this coaching relationship that I was working all hours of the morning, all hours of the night, on the weekend to try to make these things work. And I think another pivotal conversation and aha moment that we had was around like, no. You can control your calendar, right? You can give yourself white space. You need to take a lunch break, right? You need to cut off work so you can pick up your kids from school, right? Like very real, like duh things, but it was just affirming to hear someone else say that. And also note that like, you're not a failure if you step away from the business at a certain time every day. In fact, you're actually succeeding because you're setting clear boundaries and you're focused on the things that bring you joy and make you happy, and your business is still running and efficient, right? And so it was helping to pull me out of what I think I was stuck in from like corporate structures and working for other people for so long, to remind myself that I was now in the driver's seat and could literally, right, like make these decisions and put a line in the sand on what I was and wasn't going to do. And once we aligned on that and did all that work together, that just opened up so much opportunity. I mean, in the same way that I started structuring calls and focus times on my calendar, I was structuring extracurricular time with my kids. Family time was on my calendar. Date nights, at least once a month were on my calendar. Workouts in the mornings, my prayer and meditation time, like everything. And so it allowed me to most importantly show up for myself first, so that I was in a good place to then show up for my family. And it opened my eyes to like two things can be true. You can be wildly successful and great at what you do and have a great profitable business, and you can show up to the Valentine's Day party at school and make the arts and crafts and hide the elf on the shelf, right? And spend genuine, valuable time with your kids and shut your phone off and not have to be in work mode all the time. And so it took me from being somebody that, quite frankly, probably wasn't fun to be around before we started working together, in terms of like my husband and my kids' experiences and perspective, to somebody that they knew that it was a hard line of like, okay, work time is over. I'm in mommy and wife mode, and like, I'm going to give my all, and I'm going to be, something else I learned from one of the great folks I met in your circle. I'm going to be present where my feet are, right? Like present and planted where my feet are. And I think that was the biggest shift for me more than anything that has allowed me to show up as the wife and mom that I wanted to be. It is now very much a reality for me, for sure.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing. It's like, it's so interesting because I love the like nitty gritty of the business stuff, but I think I love those changes and services, offerings, messaging, marketing.
Yeah.
I think I love those changes because I know it leads to exactly what you're saying. And I think because I can see that before you can, it makes
Yep.
me so excited to just like know what's coming. So here's a question about change, right? So we know that
Mm-hmm.
change is uncomfortable. We know that
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of resistance, right? When we're starting to make these things. Like we know that we need to make them. You said there was like so much in your gut that like, and in your internal knowing that you knew. But what was one of the things that you felt like the most resistance towards that like you overcame in this process together?
Ooh, good question. Um, I felt the most, you'll agree with this. I felt the most resistance to not making decisions or not moving on something that I know I needed to move on based out of fear. I just because of like upbringing, things that have happened in my past, I was very much making every single decision or not based off of a place of like worst case scenario, right? Like can't do that because and I would automatically go to worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And so one of the biggest, I think, changes that I saw was you were able to coach me through various exercises and opportunities to know, like, no, that's worst case scenario. If we actually play this out in terms of various ways this decision could go, like, you're still fine, right? At the end of the day, you're good. So you need to empower yourself to make the decisions and take the actions that you know are right and that you feel in your heart need to happen and stop operating from a place of fear. I think, Kelsey, that was one of the biggest shifts for me that still resonates, right? Every day in my head of like, are you making this decision out of fear? Because so much of what was doing, like how I was showing up, why I was overworking, no one was asking me to do that. I was doing that because I was fearful that clients weren't going to want to work with me or they're going to think this one deliverable wasn't to their quality and expectation. And so I tried to outdo fear, right? By like
Oh,
overworking, overcompensating, overdoing. And you got to the crux of the problem of helping to actually not sit in the fear. So then
mm,
I was making more sound decisions based off of like reality, right? And the best outcomes that could happen. And what I've noticed is when I'm not making things based out of a place of fear, like literally the most beautiful things happen, things I would have never imagined. And so that's been a huge change and shift for me more than anything, because it really has changed how I show up in life overall and in my business as well.
mm. Yeah, so good. And such a good reminder, I think, for anybody that's in business because it's so, our business is the vessel in which we feed our families, you know? And so it's
Mm-hmm.
so easy to get caught up in that reactivity and that scarcity and that urgency of like, this has to happen. It has to happen right now. And if it
Yep.
doesn't, this will happen. And like just taking that step back and taking a breath and being like, is that true? And is that real? And if so, would I still be okay? You know, and
Right.
it's like those kinds of moments. And I think it's like we're more susceptible to that as mothers and as
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurs because there
Mm-hmm.
is that added pressure of like, it is our work that puts the food on the table, right? That is
Right.
very real. And so that pressure can sometimes like be in the back of our head and like promote that urgency. And then we forget like that we're creating these habits and these patterns. And then we forget about the way that we're leading and how we're showing our children to be the
Right.
same. And like, and that's where like just watching you and the way that you mother and the way that you care and the way that like I always jokingly say like you always like do the most for like your kid's birthday, but like
Mm-hmm.
that level of like devotion requires mental space that like you
Yeah.
didn't have before. And so
Right.
there's a level of like pride that you now get to take and like I'm showing up as this incredible business leader, as this woman who is making great change in all these places. And I get to show up for my kids. And I think that so many women feel like that's not possible. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yep.
So
Yep. Definitely.
So what was something that was unexpected that you learned or created or have now that you would attribute to our work together?
Whew. That's a long list. But I think,
Yes.
okay, two big things. Oh yeah, so much. I mean, one, I would say like the additional income streams that we built with the investment properties and all of that would have never happened if we weren't working together. I would say the other thing is I also built an entire foundation uh during my work with Kelsea, because we sat down one day, and I don't know if you remember this, and like mapped out what was important to me, where I wanted to have an impact, some of my life experiences, and how I wanted to help solve challenges. And so from those conversations, I literally built a foundation called the Elaine Simone Foundation that helps provide support and information and knowledge and all the things to NICU families, or families that have little babies in the NICU currently, because I was the mom of 2 NICU babies. And so that was huge for me, because you really opened my eyes to possibilities even outside of my current business infrastructure and things that I'm personally passionate about, and really pushed me to move the needle forward on those things. And then I would say the other piece is really leaning into what my long-term goals are, which I have tons of long-term goals around public speaking, speaking engagements, coaching, mentoring. And you sat down with me and helped me build out what that could look like, right? Down to the website, the messaging, the structure, the services, the offerings, who I was gonna really be reaching out to, right, in terms of that work. And then how to think about all the different businesses and things that I'm managing day by day in a way that isn't overwhelming and is totally feasible, right, in terms of how I want to show up for work and how I want to show up personally as well. So I would say, though, I mean, I could go on this for hours, but I would say those are some of the top things that come to mind for sure.
Yeah, I love that. It's such a cool reminder of just like the different spaces that we worked in, and how we kind of like, it's such a like dynamic relationship of like, okay, this is the highest need right now, and let's
Yep.
kind of step back and go back to like those goals, and are we in alignment with those, and are we stepping closer
Yep.
to those? So what would you say if somebody's listening right now and they're like, okay, thinking about hiring Kelsea, I'm not sure, I'm back and forth. I'm afraid.
Mhm.
I'm afraid of the investment. I'm afraid if I'll get results. What would you say to them?
Hands down, this was one of the top investments that I made as a business owner. I would not be where I am today. My business would not be where it is today. Most importantly, my family would not be where it is today had I not made this investment. And I'm going to take us back to what I said at the beginning. Like, faith was the biggest thing. I had a feeling, I prayed about it, and I stepped out on faith, like not knowing, right? Because all coaching experiences aren't always great, not knowing how this would turn
Right.
out. And it was the best decision that I've ever made, like hands down. So I would say step out and do it. You are not going to regret it in any way, shape, or form. It is going to change you and change the way you look at your business and how you manage your business in ways that you can never imagine. And ultimately, I know we've talked about like our one-on-one relationship and coaching, but I mean, the doors that it opened in terms of relationships and friendships and long-term connections with other dynamic women who are moms in this space is just unbelievable. And you take all that and you can't put a price tag on that, quite frankly. That is just such a value add, and it's been such a value add to who I am as a person. And I think the significant shifts and positive changes I made in my life over the past few years, for sure.
I appreciate you. I appreciate those words. And
Of
it's a great
course.
reminder of like the people that are in the circle. And I'm like so privileged to have such incredible women that I get to work with. And it is obviously, that's why I
Yes.
have the retreats, because it's so, so fun to just connect you guys and just watch what comes
Yeah.
from that. So I appreciate you so, so much. So one last question for you, and that is, what would you like to leave our audience with today that you feel like is incredibly important for any mom business owner who wants to be both present with her family and a very good, strong leader? What would you tell them that they need to start doing today?
It is very simple. Write out at least 3 things you can do over the next few months to elevate and pour into you. And it's going to feel selfish at times. It's going to feel like, should I do this? Like, I have other things I need to focus on, and these kids need me. But when I put myself first and said, I'm going to get this gym membership and go to the gym every day, or I'm going to do a self-care day every quarter, or I'm going to wake up and spend time in silence and meditation before the kids wake up, you name it. Like, I was able to show up as a completely different person because I wasn't coming to work, to my family, drained, right? With nothing in the tank. I was coming fulfilled, happy, right? Balanced, calm, not frantic. And that made such a world of difference. So I would say just get a piece of paper, get out your phone, whatever your method is, and write down just 3 ideas, no matter how small they feel, that you can do to pour into yourself. And just look back in 3 months and see the difference that made. I promise you, it is going to be such a huge shift.
Such a good reminder. Like you said, simple things are sometimes the most impactful. Well, I appreciate, again, you taking your time here with us today. And where can everybody follow your amazing journey and see your girls and see all the cool things that you're doing in your business?
Yes. So you can follow me on my page, which is like combination of business and work stuff, at Sharise, SHARISEM Johnson, on Instagram, also on Facebook. And then if you want to learn more about SMJ Communications, that's at smjcoms with an s.com. So yeah, follow along. Lots of fun things that you'll see on my page for sure.
Yes, all the cool things. And it was another favorite thing of mine watching, which we didn't actually talk about, was when you took, wasn't it 11 days off to go to Africa?
Yes.
With your husband?
That was the best. Again, something I would never have done if Kelsea didn't say, block the time. Block the time on your calendar. You're going.
I still remember when you messaged me and you're like, okay, so how do we actually like make, and I'm like, literally you go in and you block your calendar and you work around it. Like, and you're like, okay.
And it happened and it was great. And I came back and the business was just fine.
I love it. Yes. I love it. Well, thank you again for everything. We will put all of your contact information in the show notes so people can follow along with you and your family. And thank you so much for just trusting me. And I'm so excited. Like, one of the coolest things about my clients, and I told this to Charisse on our last call, is I'm like, you're never getting rid of me because now we just have to be friends.
Never.
So my apologies for that.
I know. We're not going anywhere. Nope.
So I'm so thankful for our relationship and for you. And again, for that pivotal moment where you changed my perspective, and you are just such an amazing light to this world and all you do. And I'm so privileged to know you and so thankful for our relationship.
Yes. Thank you so much. This has just been incredible. So thank you is not enough, but you know that, and I'm not going to cry. So we're going to leave it at that.
Okay, lady. Well, enjoy the rest of your day. We will talk to you soon. I will let you know when this is going to be live, and send you all the links and everything, and we'll make sure we have all the information from the show notes from you. And yeah, thank you again.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelsea.
Bye.
Bye.